Hi everyone, and welcome to our next video. In this video, we're going to take a look at how to build what we call a 555 timer. And so let's get started. First thing, we're going to need a power supply. So you're going to do a search in Tinkercad and bring in this power supply. I by mistake set this to 9 volts. I should have put it to 5 volts. So please make a note when we use a 555 timer. We're going to set it to 5 volts. Next thing, we're going to power up our breadboard. So we're going to put a red wire to the red power bar and make sure that that's set to be the right color. We always put red as positive. So let me get that right. Next, we'll put the negative to the black power rail. When you want to bend a wire, just click on it and put it in place, and then you can bend it after and change the color after. So that's what I'm doing here. Next thing, once I've got that, I want to use both power rails. I've got 2 positive power rails, but I actually need to connect them together. So I'm going to do that with a wire. So put that across the board. Do the same thing with your ground. Make that black. So there, now we have 2 positive power rails and we have 2 negative power rails for building a circuit. Next thing, let's do a search, and we're going to go grab the 555 timer. It is what we call an integrated circuit, meaning it is a small chip that has a certain number of pins. This one has 8 pins, and notice it's got a little white dot in one of the corners. That denotes pin number 1. When you put an IC on a breadboard, you got to put it across the center. So very important, put it across the center of the board. Now, the way you identify the pins is in the top left. That's the white dot, that's pin 1. Then going down, we have 2, 3, 4. Then we go across and go up from there. So pin 1 is in the upper left, pin 4 is the bottom left, pin 5 is in the bottom right, and pin 8 is in the top right. So just be careful with that. Now what we're going to do is hook up the schematic shown on the right hand side. So we can start in a whole bunch of different places. I'm going to start by putting in the 1K ohm resistor. So let's bring in a resistor. It's 1K ohm. We'll bring that in. And you're going to see that in the schematic over on the right hand side. Next, we're going to bring in another resistor. We need a 1 meg ohm resistor. So bring that in. That's going to go in series with a 1K ohm resistor. So place it on the breadboard as shown. There, you've got your 1 meg ohm resistor. Below that, we need a polarized capacitor. So bring in the polarized capacitor. We need a 1 microfarad cap. So bring that in. And we got to make sure that the negative goes towards the bottom. So make sure you rotate it around like so and put in the cap like that. That cap goes to ground. So why don't we hook that up right now? So the negative side of the cap goes to ground. Let's put in that wire. Since that's a ground wire, let's make it black like so. Next thing, again, we could do a number of different things looking at the schematic. We're going to connect 5 volts to the top of the 1K ohm resistor. So we need 5 volts there, so put in a wire, goes to the top of the 1K ohm resistor. Next thing, let's go take a look at pin number 1, and as you can see in the schematic, pin number 1 actually goes to ground. So we have to hook a wire from pin 1 to ground. And we'll put that as a black wire, just like that. Next, pin 2 goes to the positive side of the cap. So I'm going to need a wire that goes from pin 2 all the way down towards our cap, and it's connected to the positive side of the capacitor. I want to bend this wire. It's a little bit tricky getting used to this. The software gets a little confused. When you want to bend a wire, it's best if you put it in an open space, not near a hole. As you can see, I'm even struggling here. I'm going to just redo this here. So starting from pin 2, I'm going to move it to an open place like so, and then I can bend the wire after. So I'm going to double click and then bend it, and then bring it down, bend it again, like so. So there. And I'm going to make that green because it's neither really a positive or a negative, so I'm going to make it green as just a connecting wire from pin 2 to the top of the cap. Next thing, if you take a look, you can see that pin 6 is also connected to the top of the cap. So I need a wire from pin 6, which is right there, and I need to go to the top of the cap. So let's put in a wire. When you build circuits in Tinkercad, try not to overlap wires and devices. Sometimes it's hard though. I'm going to try to just cross over here and make it so my breadboard's kind of easy to follow here. So I'm going to bend this wire down here to the top of the cap. And again, I'm going to make that green because it is a connecting wire. I'm just going to move this so my wires, as best as I can, not overlapping anything like so. So there, pin 6 goes to the top of the cap. Next thing, what we'll do is, let's take a look at pin 7. Pin 7 goes in between the 1K ohm and the 1 meg ohm resistor. So let's go from pin 7, which is here, and we're going to go down to in between the 1K ohm resistor and the 1 meg ohm resistor. So let's take this wire and I'll bend it down around and I'll put it in between those two resistors like so. There, that is done. Now, next, let's take a look. We can see on our schematic here, pin 8 goes to 5 volts. So I'm going to go to pin 8 here, and let's put that to 5 volts. And we'll make that a red wire, like so. Next, let's take a look at what's coming out of pin 3. You can see, actually, sorry, let's go to pin 4. Pin 4 also goes to 5 volts. Sorry, let's do that one. Pin 4 goes to 5 volts, like so. And then let's go take a look at what's coming out of pin 3. Pin 3, we have a 100 ohm resistor. So let's bring that out and put that on the board over on the left. So going out from pin 3, we need a 100 ohm resistor. So let's put that in, and then followed after the 100 ohm resistor is an LED. So let's go grab an LED, and we're going to make sure we get the right polarity for this device. Remember, if we want it to be forward biased, current has to go from the anode to the cathode. So we're going to spin this around here to get the cathode on the top, if you will. So I've got to connect that like so. So, sorry, anode on the top and the cathode on the bottom, just like so. Now looking at the schematic, you're going to see that from the cathode that does go to ground. So let's connect the cathode of the LED to ground like so. There, that's connected. Now we need to put the wire that goes from pin 3 down to the top of that 100 ohm resistor. So let's take a wire and let's bring it down to the top of that 100 ohm resistor. So we'll bring it in like that. I'll just bend it around here. So again, I'm trying not to cover my other wires here. So let's just bend this over like so. There, I'm not covering any wires. Make my breadboard nice and easy to follow. So there, I'm going to keep that green. That's a connecting wire. Now notice here, pin 5 is not connected to anything. We can just leave it open. I'm just going to go through now and just check to make sure that all of my connections are correct. Just look at the schematic and just make sure I've got everything hooked correctly. And there, it looks like I've got everything right. So I should be able to go and start the simulation. And again, it should be set to 5 volts, not 9. That's my mistake. So it is working, but let's put it to 5 volts when you do this in the lab. If you set it up correctly, what a 555 timer does is actually generates a on and off pulse that can turn an LED off and on. So that is your goal. You're trying to get that LED to flash. If it doesn't flash, if it doesn't turn on, then we have hooked this up incorrectly. When you guys hand in your screen captures, make sure your name is in the upper left in the Tinkercad file so I know it's you. Finally, you might be asked to put in a scope. So we're going to do a search for a scope, and I can bring in a scope and I could hook it across a device like an LED. Now I'm spinning mine around here, but let's keep it up and down here, and you're going to hook it across the LED and you're going to show me what the output looks like. I'm not going to do it in this video. I want you to put in a scope across the LED and you should see an output on your scope, and then you're going to take a screen capture of that. So that is your goal for this assignment. You're trying to get the 555 timer to work, and once you get the LED flashing, you're going to bring in a scope and try to scope across that LED and see what the output is. So if you do have any problems setting this up, or you're not sure how things work, make sure you ask and I will help you. That's it, everybody.